Hi, I'm Ash and welcome to this video where we are taking a look at the new Naish Hatch V2 Parawing. Earlier this year I did test the Hatch V1. I didn't review it and just gave manufacturer feedback, but it does mean I can compare back to the Hatch V1 for this review. We now have the Hatch V2 and without doubt much has changed and been improved to make this a competitive product. But before we get into that, let's take a look at the Parawing itself and the features that have changed since the original Hatch V1. I will in this review make a lot of comparisons to Ozone wings, as those are what I fly, and in terms of volume of wings sold they are without doubt the current market leader. First we have an updated bar. This has removed the lines to the middle of the bar and instead gone to what is becoming the standard, which is a bowline system that keeps the middle bridles away from the bar and your hands and fingers. The bar is also significantly developed and features a hook type bar, first seen on the duotone Stash. This allows you to hold ahead of the A-lines for Depower without having to use a nub or extended bar beyond the A-lines where they connect to the bar. Built into the bar we also have a bungee style harness line. This removes the need to attach separate harness lines to the bar itself and also offers a tangle resistant and much cleaner bar. More on this later, as there are some compromises in using this type of harness system. The lines themselves have also changed from version 1. We now have line separation of the A-lines into a group of lines that you use for stow. This is presented as one line that you grab and lead your hand to the front middle bridles on the battens. You then only need to gather up the ears of the leading edge to get your battens neatly together. This system was first seen as a community modification, which then was first seen directly implemented by a manufacturer on the Ozone power pack. The battens themselves are metal rather than plastic, something I don't think we have seen before, which means they are tougher and much less prone to becoming deformed from poor stowing. They are of course a metal that does not rust or oxidize in sea or fresh water. The wing also features some of the triangular bridle replacements that was first seen on the Pocket Rocket V2, I believe. So we do have a Parawing here that is borrowing from multiple different innovations in the Parawing world and bringing them together in a single Parawing. The lines are relatively short and certainly for this 3.5 meter wing are well within an arm span for stowing. The A-lines themselves are considerably thicker than the Hatch V1 and much more comfortable to use and run your hands down even for a well-powered Parawing stow. I'll just mention here that they are not as thick or as comfortable to use as the Ozone variant of the A-lines, but they are thick enough that you don't feel like they were cut into your hands, and these will be a little more aerodynamic and less drag for the Parawing due to being slightly thinner. We do have separation of colours for the leading edge itself and the rest of the canopy. We also have separation of colours for the different lines from A through to D, as there are 4 sets of lines going to the bowline. The canopy material seems quite similar or even the same as the Hatch V1. Not a bad thing, as it looks quite hard wearing and is reasonably hydrophobic. We appear to have less battens than the original Hatch, and when we stow via the A-lines, the mushrooms of battens that you get is much smaller and compact than it was on the Hatch V1. Much easier to sort out and pack up your Parawing for stashing in a belt. So overall this feels like a more premium and thought out product than the Hatch V1. The bar specifically is a significant jump forward, as are the modifications to the canopy and lines. Naish have done well here to pull from recent innovations and amalgamate it all into a single Parawing, as well as having innovation or two of their own. Let's get this onto the water and do a proper review. I've been formalising this for a little while now. We have a settled format for inflatable wing reviews, and now I'm going to do the same for Parawing. Our categories are pump onto foil, low end, bar pressure, depower, speed, top end, upwind ability, wind range, ease and comfort of stowing, reliability of redeploy, stow size, steering, jibing, tacking, down looping and handle passing. So quite a lot of categories, so let's start with the pump onto foil. It feels very much on par with other good Parawings. It isn't quite as solid to pump as the Pocket Rocket V2, nor does it pull downwind like a power pack, or pull quite as hard as a power pack. The wing flies quite well forwards in the window. It is a little bit prone to backstall if you hold too far back, similar to the power pack. Overall, it feels quite comfortable for the pump onto foil. The feeling is more towards the Pocket Rocket V2 than the power pack, which pulls a bit more downwind. Just lacking some of the solidity from the Pocket Rocket V2 that allows you to pump that wing quite effectively. You can pump the Hatch V2 and gain some traction from the wing when pumping, just not quite as much as you get from a Pocket Rocket V2. The low end feels good, and I would say it is comparable to either of the Ozone offerings. I didn't feel like I was lacking anything to assist me in getting onto foil. The hatch does pull quite forward in the wind window, so you do have to work on hand placement a little to get it sit back and in the power. Bar pressure is very middle of the road. It doesn't pull hard like the power pack, and it always feels very manageable even when very overpowered. Obviously it can pull quite hard when overpowered, but it doesn't become a very physical fight in overpowered conditions. The Depower is really quite effective. You can cause most of the canopy to flutter whilst the leading edge stays relatively solid and steerable. So here I feel Depower is actually very good, better than the power pack and also better than the Pocket Rocket V2. It's a very manageable wing in a range of wind strengths. Speed is also actually very good. You can get a very respectable turn of speed, certainly quicker than a power pack, possibly similar to the Pocket Rocket V2, which I feel is a better comparison for overall speed. Due to the very useful Depower, the top end is quite high and extends the range of the Parawing before it feels just too much to manage. Again, this is a very composed wing. It flies really well indeed. Upwind ability, I would say, falls somewhere between the power pack and the Pocket Rocket V2. It certainly goes upwind better than the power pack, but I'm not convinced it outperforms a Pocket Rocket V2. It's somewhere in the middle ground between the two, probably closer to the Pocket Rocket V2 than it is the power pack. For wind range, the low end is similar to the Ozone wings, and I would say we probably have a bit more overall range than the Pocket Rocket V2 due to that very effective Depower. The Pocket Rocket V2, whilst very capable, does not have that same degree of Depower. In all cases, the Hatch V2 is much nicer to stow than the Hatch version 1. It comes out of the sky easier on the new A-line stow. The front A-lines are comfortable to use, not quite as comfortable as the power pack or Pocket Rocket V2 A-lines, but definitely not cutting into my hands or making me concerned that stowing could lead to a cut. The wing does depower nicely when you run the front A-lines, and it is really quite easy to depower and stow even a quite powered up Parawing with relative ease. The metal battens are very solid and gather together nicely for a neat stow. The ears of the wing are not huge and easy to gather in, and the whole thing packs down pretty small. Not quite as small as a power pack, but certainly smaller than a Pocket Rocket V2. When it comes to redeploy, we also have a very solid and reliable redeploy. I didn't experience any weird spinning or a tendency for the wing to be slow to reopen. Now I will caveat that with the fact that this is a 3.5 meter, so this does tend to be the first size where line length, canopy size and the overall dynamics of the Parawings improve. Bigger sizes are generally where problems with redeploy may start to manifest. Putting that to one side, this did pop open really nicely, and it only experienced one or two minor tangles where a rear line had managed to wrap over the bar during the redeploy, something that can happen in any rushed redeploy. When it comes to steering, the hatch is really intuitive and it steers well whether depowered or not. There's not really any significant slack in the rear lines and the lines are quite short. The wing itself is also not overly high aspect, so a lot of things are on it in its favour to be reactive and easy to steer. For jibes, I found it turned nicely and didn't have any tendency to want to divert off in the wrong direction. Sometimes it needed a little C-line steer in light wind to bring it around more quickly, but overall it jibes nicely and steers quite intuitively. For tacks, the hatch is quite fast, faster than a power pack for example, and has decent upwind ability. This means you have both speed and a good high angle upwind to initiate attack. It flies without a huge amount of drag through the eye of the wind, and I found it quite intuitive and very similar to the Pocket Rocket V2 in this regard. I did on occasion grab the bar too far back, which stalled the wing on the tack exit. This is something I also do on the power pack sometimes, but less so on the Pocket Rocket V2 as it is less prone to back stalling. Downloops were also easy and it performed them nicely. It does have quite a strong urge to fly to the edge of the window on exiting the downloop, so you do have to be ready for that. The power pack does this less, but the Pocket Rocket V2 does have a similar tendency. Lastly, I did any number of handle pass jibes and it is very compliant to this type of jibe and repowered really nicely after the handle pass. I didn't have any issues with the handle pass failing or the wing getting caught up or failing to open up nicely after the handle pass. The hatch does have a built-in harness line, which is a bungee style, so we should talk about it. It works well enough and the wing is very nicely balanced when you are hooked into the built-in harness. I did find the bungee much harder to hook into, having to grab it with a spare hand and place it into my harness hook. When very powered up, this did lead to quite a bit of fingers getting pinched between the hook and the bungee line. Personally, I prefer a fixed loop, but the downside of this is they do tend to tangle in lines, which the bungee harness doesn't. So it depends on whether you want a clean, free from tangle bar or ease of hooking. So this covers all the areas of performance. Let's have a talk about pros and cons. Pros are that we have good all-round performance, good upwind, nice line length, stows and redeploys very reliably, tacks and jibes nicely, comparable low end to the market for good parawings, and a decent top end and a really good depower. The cons: the A-lines for me could be a little bit thicker or softer for ultimate stow comfort, and the harness line is not as easy to use as a fixed loop. Overall, a pretty good result and quite a significant jump forward from the original Hatch version 1. In terms of who this is for, well, this Parawing from a performance perspective sort of sits between the Power Pack and the Pocket Rocket V2. It has the nice stow and redeploy and line lengths from the Power Pack, but it doesn't quite pack down as small. It has better upwind ability than the Power Pack and better speed, but maybe not quite matching the Pocket Rocket V2 with its longer lines and slightly higher aspect ratio. So as an all-round wing it really does excel, and in some respects doesn't make you pick between stow and redeploy or upwind capability and speed like the Ozone products do. As an all-round wing it is a very nice product to use, and I would say absolutely is competitive with the current market leaders. Refinement, build quality and the overall finish of the bar, lines and the whole product has stepped up a notch, and this I believe firmly places Naish in the running with this new Parawing. Of course, the Parawing market is still moving at a crazy development pace, but if you're looking to invest in a good all-round Parawing, then the Hatch V2 presents a compelling new product to the market. I'd like to thank Alex Tobert from Naish UK for supplying the demo Hatch V2 3.5 metre for review. It has been returned to the demo pool, so contact Naish UK or your local Naish dealer if you want to try one.